Part 3. Academic and Research Integrity. Information literacy is powerful and important, and it is required when we're developing academic and research integrity. Academic integrity requires clear definitions. It holds an international currency. In terms of institutional reputational damage, plagiarism discovered in research higher degrees theses that's reported by international examiners is the most damaging form of academic misconduct that a university can face. So a university can be pretty well permanently damaged if a plagiarism claim emerges during a doctorate. What we have to do is to ensure that your research is excellent, original, transparent and accountable. Now, I know plagiarism suggests punishment, but internationally there's a new movement for both undergraduates and postgraduates to enable information literacy. This movement is academic integrity. Tracy Brewtag, in her remarkable Handbook of Academic Integrity, described it as, quote, critical to every aspect of the educational process, end of quote. Academic integrity is often used as synonymous with research integrity. You sometimes hear educational integrity. There are differences between these phrases, but the overlap is also really clear. Before this change in language, academic integrity was really a plagiarism policy. So before we talk through that change, let's be clear on the definitions. Academic integrity is a positive phrase, a positive suite of policies and procedures that enables information literacy, citation practices, and referencing. Curtin University, for example, focuses core values in academic integrity. So integrity is founded on honesty, trust, fairness, respect, courage, excellence, and impact. Academic integrity is at the core of higher degree programs. Academic freedom is founded on and by a community of scholars who share rights and responsibilities. Historically, this phrase emerged through the end of the 19th century, when university academics were not only required to teach, but start to publish original research. There is a relationship between academic integrity and research integrity. There is a relationship between academic misconduct and research misconduct. The Australian Research Council focuses on research integrity and research misconduct with the goal of safeguarding the confidence in publicly funded research, with the goal of valuing peer review, grant selection processes and evaluation protocols, but also the maintenance of research standards. An integrity breach, whether it is a research breach or an academic breach, is a deviation from agreed principles. Academic misconduct and research misconduct refer to fabrication, plagiarism, fraud, deception, or falsification. It also refers to a mismanagement of conflict of interest, including the selection of PhD examiners, a failure to gain or abide by ethics clearances, and at Columbia University, academic integrity and the responsible conduct of research is aligned within a single policy. And there's a lot of focus on proper citation and attention to paraphrasing, interestingly enough. But in Australia, there was a major national policy intervention in 2018. In 2018, the Australian Code for the Responsible Conduct of Research was released. It was a revision of the previous code. The 2018 version sets out broad principles confirming an honest, ethical and conscientious research culture for our researchers, but also for our higher education institutions. All national funding, including from the NHMRC, must adhere to the code, and the code is important for research training. In December 2019, the NHMRC, the ARC and Universities Australia released a document titled Supervision, a guide to supporting the Australian Code for the Responsible Conduct of Research. This is a powerful document. It is a freely available document. All the excuses are over. There is no courtesy authorship. There is no, this is the way it's always been done in my field. This is the way it's always been done in my discipline. And because this is the way it's always been done, therefore you need to put my name on that article. All this stuff has gone. These unjust practices are now in breach of the Australian Code for the Responsible Conduct of Research. So this new code was released in 2018, very clear instructions for authorship, very clear instructions about the requirements of what it is to be an author. The guidelines are really clear. For example, I'll read item 6 to you from that 2019 Supervision Guide. Quote, examples of breaches of the code that are related to supervision include, but are not limited to, failure by a supervisor to provide adequate guidance or mentorship on the responsible conduct of research to researchers or research trainees under their supervision, or demanding or accepting authorship of a research output on the basis of supervision, where the individual does not also satisfy the authorship criteria in the authorship guide. End of quote. Most of us, through our academic lives around the world, have seen some dreadful behaviour around academic authorship. But Australia now has really powerful and strong guidelines. Just because any of us supervise a higher degree student, that has nothing to do with authorship. Nothing. All authors must prove their authorship by a set of criteria. So let me tell you about that criteria. Authors must contribute to 2 of the following 3 criteria. 1, research design. 2, data collection and interpretation. 3, substantive writing and drafting. These verification protocols are important between academic colleagues, and they're incredibly important to you, our students. It is therefore important that these discussions emerge early in your candidature and are the very foundations of your research project. These agreements must be handled with decency, with transparency, and with respect. It's very important to recognise the distinctiveness of the Australian higher education system. Higher degree students own their intellectual property unless they sign it away. And these contracts need to be signed by the student early. So if there are industry partnerships in place or alternative IP collaborations in place, these negotiations need to be held early in the candidature. And without this contract, without this agreement, students own their IP. There are plenty of assumptions about authorship, particularly tethered to research supervision, and I still hear supervisors and prospective supervisors around this country state that if they supervise a person, then they are going to expect an authorship credit. But assumptions are not enough. Assumptions may be in the breach of the Code of Conduct. In response to the Code, academic integrity and misconduct is also transforming. For research higher degree students and supervisors, this manifests in 2 ways. Yes, there is a focus on plagiarism through the candidature, but there's also a focus on plagiarism discovered during the examination process. So while the processes to discover academic misconduct, particularly plagiarism through the examination process, are clear and have not changed, it is important that we all talk about how academic misconduct is managed through the candidature. So, for example, can a draft exchanged between a supervisor and a student be an example of academic misconduct? So that means you send your supervisor a draft and your supervisor believes you haven't cited something correctly, and then you're charged with alleged academic misconduct, and you have to go through the university processes. So this is quite a troubling scenario, which I have seen. And one of the troubling bits of this story is, what is the status of a draft? Is the draft submitted to a supervisor submitted and accessible work? So universities around the world have got themselves into a bit of trouble when supervisors who don't like their students and would like their students to no longer be in their supervisory suite, they then cry plagiarism on a minor draft to remove that student from their supervision. So this gets quite messy, and this is a real threat. At one of my former universities, a very unhappy supervisor cried plagiarism on a student draft, and I had to investigate it as the head of school using undergraduate regulations. But therefore, is the draft you give a supervisor accessible work like an undergraduate essay? Well, I would argue no. But the ambiguity can cause you, as a student, a huge amount of stress and trouble. So clearly the final thesis is accessible, but are the weekly drafts exchanged between supervisors and students of that same status? Well, what we've done now at Charles Darwin University, and many universities around the country have also done this, is we've intensified the importance of the milestones that are held each year, and we make text matching software available for every student to use. So text matching software is like Turnitin or Authenticate, and I want students to use it not as a punishment. I want you to use it as a diagnostic for you to check your own note-taking, quoting, paraphrasing abilities throughout your candidature. By you enacting this diagnostic, it builds transparency so that you and your supervisor can discuss your rigour, your intellectual levels of scholarship, but also you can discuss academic integrity, academic misconduct, and therefore discuss a lot more in the conversation than simply plagiarism. Yes, collusion is a significant variable too. It is part of the academic misconduct suite, but it is rare in doctoral education. It involves working together on a submission that was meant to be the result of individual work. The line between collusion and collaboration can get messy in undergraduate experiences, but the difference is collusion involves deceit. The students lie about the work they've done with another person, and they represent the work as a result of individual effort. Where it may have a bearing on the work we do is we have to make sure that every bit of published work during the doctoral program is correctly cited with clear presentations of the percentage of work completed by others in terms of research design, data collection and analysis, and the writing and editing up of that research. Remember, examiners need to know that this is your work. Simply listing yourself as the first author is not enough. Examiners need to know with full transparency what is your role, what is your role in each stage of the research. For those of us working in doctoral and master's education, we must make sure that you have all the professional development skills you require. Referencing, high-level writing skills, but also research ethics, ensuring that your methods are well deployed, that your evidence is correctly cited and it's not invented. The point of academic integrity in doctoral education is to ensure that the original contribution to knowledge that you create can be transparently confirmed, checked, and verified throughout the process of your candidature. So your ethics clearances, your methods, your footnotes. Now, all of this seems simple enough. And yes, software can make a difference, and I would recommend the use of text matching software. Run your work through Turnitin as a draft, and make sure that you exclude quotations. And don't overinvest in the number. look at the text matching that is revealed. And that's why it's important to click the exclude quotations little bar. This may reveal work you have published, right? So it's very important to look at those matches and state and reference the components of the thesis that have been published. So cite your own work and put that citation in. So your use of Turnitin in draft is not a punishment. It's available for you to check your work first, before your supervisor, before your examiners. And this is how you learn, and this is how you improve your information literacy. Our job is to care for you, to make sure that you have the skills that you need and that you are supported in the development of academic and research integrity.